Welcome to Drinking Bros, presented by GhostBed.com.
Welcome to Drinkin' Bros, kids. Dan.
Yep.
We got two surviving members of the Holocaust on today. We've had a lot of crazy guests.
Wait, which Holocaust are we talking about?
I think the one in Germany. Not real sure.
Oh, shit.
I thought you meant the comedy cancel culture Holocaust.
Yeah. Look, same thing at this point, right? We got Doug Stanhope and Paul Provenza on the show today. If what I said at the top seems unrealistic, so do both of your lives, by the way. Doug, we'll start with you. I want to get into a story that I heard Bert Kreischer tell on his show where you cashed in airline miles just to go to airport bars around the world, didn't get off in any of the countries except to go to the airport bars, and you lasted about 36 hours. Is that true?
No, it was 77 hours, and I paid for it to get status. I didn't use miles. I paid it so I could get diamond medallion on Delta. I went from Tucson through Atlanta to Johannesburg to Amsterdam through Detroit, Vegas, Salt Lake, and back without leaving an airport.
Jesus.
Best bar. What was the best bar?
Can I just say that Doug has the most enviable life of any comedian. It's just like, it's a perfect life for a comedian. He doesn't give a shit about the comedy business. He doesn't give a shit about television or movies. He just does what he wants to do. And idiots come out and see him all the time. And he does great work and he doesn't give a fuck. And he lives his life like it's just pure. It feels to me like moment to moment, just whatever he fucking feels like doing. I am so jealous of Doug Stanhope's life.
But it's one of those lives that doesn't seem real. And until you sit down and actually have a conversation about it, like that story you just told was so much better than the one that was traveling around where I'm like, holy shit, 77 hours. How did you stay up that long and keep boozing?
Well,
Practice.
I mean, just Atlanta to Johannesburg is 15 hours, so that's a fucking half a bar of Xanax, and you just like Dave Attell's old bit. Did you ever black out, or as I call it, time travel?
Yeah, you've been practicing a long time, and you might think that all of this is wild and unbelievable, but this is what happens when you act like a man and commit yourself to drug use at a young age.
Yeah.
I've been telling you guys this for years. Start doing drugs.
Start doing drugs. Do drugs responsibly.
Yeah.
You look great. Very much in the Keith Richards realm. I think you're going to live forever. I just got out of the hospital 2 days ago, by the way. I was in for 6 weeks. It was fucking pneumonia. A guy like you who's doing this shit, you've probably never been in the hospital.
No, a couple times. I had a couple of hernia surgeries where someone said, "Oh, that can become necrotizing and rot," and just the word necrotizing. I went, fuck it, I'll get it. I'll get surgery, and I got the surgery free. The first one, I just put on my website, hey, if I have any doctor fans that want to trade free hernia surgery for a T-shirt and a CD, I got it. I didn't the T-shirt or the CD.
Our buddy, it's funny you say that. Our buddy Kirill, to help one of the big plastic surgeons in Miami promote his business, was giving away free boob jobs and dick implants and shit not too long ago. So look, doctors are the more we can get concierge medicine, and I can negotiate one-on-one with that guy instead of having to talk to the greater healthcare industry, I'm good with that.
Oh, yeah.
I can reason with another human being. I can't talk to an institution.
100%.
When you get like a handyman and it says not a licensed contractor, if there's a doctor that's had his license pulled for some bullshit, I should be able to go to him knowing he's unlicensed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I 100% agree with that.
Why is practicing medicine without a license a problem, but being like working at Fox or CNN not a problem?
Well, look, it is a problem today. They lit the fucking Christmas tree on fire.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Did you guys see that?
This is like
I was out of town. It wasn't me.
They got the guy, but I watched that fucker burn on the news this morning, and I was like, we're there. The war on Christmas really has started. Congratulations, we just lit the fucking tree on fire outside.
Can I just Can I just say that it was beautiful? It was actually like a beautiful thing to watch, a Christmas tree go up in flames. It's gorgeous.
After Christmas is burning the dead Christmas tree out in the fire pit. They burn like a motherfucker. It's gorgeous.
That's a good point.
But I don't know about you guys, I had a family that there was a ravine, so you had to find the closest ravine, and it was my job as a kid to throw the Christmas tree down the ravine. And as I got older, there was about 14 Christmas trees still like half dead, half alive at the bottom of this ravine, with like still like random decorations on them.
Yeah, that's the thing that kills me. You see that in New York all the time too.
Yeah.
People just throw their Christmas tree out, tinsel, balls, things hanging off them. It's like you could just see the guy going, "Fuck this."
Well, at least the British have Boxing Day. Like Boxing Day is December 26th, and that's when you put all your Christmas shit away. Mm-hmm. Like, get rid of that shit. It's over. I think it should just be a big bonfire, like a nationwide bonfire. Although those are kind of canceled now because of what happened at that university a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah.
The burning,
the tiki torches.
Not Burning Man, but no, not the tiki torches. What
Texas A&M.
Yeah, Texas A&M, where
A&M.
they burn all the like giant whatever the fuck it is, and then people start dying, obviously, because kids are stupid.
Yeah, well, that's going to happen. I don't blame the kids on that one.
Well, you're going to have some deaths when fire's involved, I think, typically.
Doug, another one I want to get into.
You have to teach your children pyromania at a young age.
Yeah.
You can't send them off to college never having set a bunch of shit on fire.
That's a good point. I accidentally set my grandmother's garden on fire when I was like 8 years old, and it was a big to-do, and I never burned anything down again after that.
No, and it all starts with this. You give a kid this at 6 or 7 years old. Congratulations, you'll learn how to set fires responsibly. Doug, another story I want to get into was you're friends with Johnny Depp, and at one point his ex-wife was suing you, Amber Heard. Was that true? There was a defamation suit against you?
Yeah, just to get me to shut up. She dropped it eventually. She had nothing, absolutely nothing.
But it's still costly.
Yeah, and it's still costing him now because he got removed from the sequel to the fucking Harry Potter movie or whatever that's coming out.
Well, that's because he needs to be right, and he keeps fighting this. Like everyone else that's been under the fucking gun for any reason, once they just shut up and go away, it goes away. But he refuses to be wrong, which I don't blame him. I get it, but I mean, how much fucking headache before you go, fuck it, and throw it out like an old Christmas tree with all the ornaments still on.
Didn't she like go right from Johnny Depp to dating like Elon Musk or something?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the details, but I think that had been a thing before Johnny. I think she had dated him, and then he was back around,
Here's the thing. I can say what I know about her because a friend of mine did a movie with her years ago. She was always kind of a social climber, like as high as she could get. I don't know if you know this, but she was married to a woman. She was full lesbian, and then they got divorced. It was like a high-powered publicist.
And she also got arrested for domestic violence with that chick.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And here's a crazier fact. At their engagement party, one of the guests got hit by a car, smoked on the PCH out there. And there was a lawsuit from that as well. I mean,
she could just be a member of the Kennedy family at that point.
Everywhere she goes, she's like Hillary Clinton. Somebody's going to die or something's going to get fucked up. A finger's going to get chopped off by a wine bottle. That girl is fucking pure poison.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know how good the pussy is. It must be worth it because all these people are willing to risk it all.
We would go out to dinner with me and Bingo and them and Johnny's sister, and she would always just come into the restaurant and look at us like, this is not why I married Johnny Depp, was to meet Doug Stanhope. Fucking hatred on her face.
She was hoping you guys were hanging out with John Legend and Chrissy Teigen, and Doug Stanhope and Bingo show up at dinner.
Well, that would be a win in my book.
Same here, but not for her. She wants to go as high as she can. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it depends on what you mean by high, though, right? Like he's smoking right now.
Yeah. Obviously, but I'm talking like you go to Musk. Who's above Musk at this point? Maybe Bezos, but that's about it.
I think you got to go after you've reached the corporate ladder. You got to go world leader ladder, right? So, and you can't go Western politician because they're all too weird. You got to go authoritarian.
You got to go Xi.
Xi Jinping is the only step left for Amber Heard at this point, in my opinion. The problem is she's going to have to convert to communism, right? Because they don't fuck around over there.
Is that a problem? You know her. She'd convert.
The one that goes, if you're going to keep being a communist, I'm leaving you.
Don't these people talk to each other? Like, I would think, a guy like Elon Musk could just call up Johnny Depp or, call up Jeff Bezos and go, this one's nuts. Stay away from this one. But apparently they don't.
Yeah, you need
to answer his phone.
It's like a Carfax report for crazy pussy.
Yeah.
Basically. There's got to be something like that. You guys develop it.
Show me the car puss.
Doug couldn't figure out the technology to get this show to happen today, so I don't know if that's going to work. We got to hire some Asians to get this done.
Yeah, not white people.
No.
It's got to be Asians or Indians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Drinkin brothers, I see a bottle of water in front of you.
Yeah, so that is me, actually. No lie, just got out of the hospital less than 36 hours ago. I was in for about...
Pneumonia for 6 weeks?
Yes.
He had double pneumonia.
And I was in a coma for like a week. So I've got about 18 holes on this side of my body.
You were in a coma from pneumonia?
Yeah, out. I mean, fully out. And it was...
his lungs kept filling up with liquid, and you can't remove it unless you intubate somebody, and you have to put them out for that.
Correct. So there was 17 liters that was removed from my lungs. And burning it at both ends. We got a hard seltzer coming out next month. It's being canned right now, along with the media company. We own about 16 podcasts. Not enough sleep, boozing, stress. You get the gig at that point. But it was lights out, guerrilla radio. I don't remember anything.
You say it's getting canned right now. Like, is it taken off the market because it gives you pneumonia?
No. It's they're pouring it into the can. If it gave people pneumonia, it'd be Four Loko, and we'd all be rich. I wouldn't even fucking be here right now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
If it goes right into the lung, you drink it, it goes right into the lung.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you create something that kills people, every college kid in America will buy it. That's what I've learned. So.
Yeah, they say the fucking junkies, they want fentanyl. Like, they want the junk that has fentanyl in it, even though it's...
No, I heard the story. I don't know if it's true, but it sounds like it might be, knowing... you guys know Amazing Jonathan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so, he's supposedly been... he's supposed to have died like 10 years ago or something, 8 years ago. And I heard the story that he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm still doing heroin and I'm still doing crack. And the doctor just looked at him and said, I guess keep doing that, because it seems to be what's keeping you alive, maybe.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It's like an old person when their spouse dies, they die, or when somebody retires and they die. Your purpose in life is to get high. You lose your purpose, you fucking die.
Oh, yeah. I'll give you two quick Amazing Jonathan stories, just briefly. First acting class in L.A., I sit down, he's sitting next to me, and I had seen him in Vegas. And I was like, what are you doing here, man? And he goes, look, I'm trying to get into acting. If I stay in Vegas and keep doing my act, I'm going to fucking die. And I don't even know him. Like, I don't know him. And I was like, it was a frightening welcome to LA story where I'm like, Jesus Christ, is it that bad? And he said, yes, it's that bad. I'm trying to fix my career. It didn't happen. And then he went back to Vegas, right? Second story, we had Steve Byrne on the show.
Yeah, a good buddy of mine. He's
great buddy, great stand-up.
This one's really funny because Steve Byrne was doing that documentary that I'm sure you've all seen. If you haven't, it's when I say you all, I mean the listeners here. It's on YouTube for free. You can watch it. But Steve found out while doing the documentary that Jonathan had also sold his life rights to like two other people, and they were doing concurrent documentaries.
Yeah,
and he's like,
right. So Steve's is the documentary that incorporates the making of the other documentary. That's the one.
He mentions it, at some point, and I think the two film crews run into each other in one of the scenes. That's fucking funny, dude.
And they push each other out.
Yeah,
like one crew is like shooting on stage, the other crew is relegated to the balcony, and it becomes this whole like feud between them.
Yeah,
nuts.
That untoppable NA story where someone's going, I lost my job and I lost my wife. I sold the rights to my life to two different people.
The only other time that I've heard that was somebody came in and pitched my production company, Pele, to shoot a biopic on Pele, right? And I was like, oh my God, this will be massive around the world. This woman was like, I've got the contract, I've got the life rights. And I was like, all right, great. Let me clear this with the lawyers, but we're on board and we're all in. Like, this is fucking crazy. Called the lawyers and they were like, hey, Pele's done this to about 40 people.
Wow.
Take your best shot if you want.
No
Pele,
pun,
yes.
Pun intended, obviously.
Obviously. But they were like, look, he gets drunk at parties and he'll sign his life rights off to anybody to make a movie about his life. And they were like, get in line. There's about 40 other people. And I don't know what those lawsuits will look like.
Well, you can't sue Pele, though. He's too beloved.
No, but a production company will sue you if they were the first ones on board. But nobody knows who the first ones were.
Well.
And that's Pele. So if you're wondering who Pele is, he fucking parties.
That's why I don't watch soccer.
No.
Because it doesn't make any fucking sense.
No, not at all. And then, I thought the Amazing Jonathan thing was the craziest shit I've ever heard until we're going to get into the documentary that you're making right now about Andy Andrist. This is Andrist.
Andrist.
And Antichrist, if you want to call him that. But not here today. He's got some medical.
Yeah, he's dealing with some medical shit. In fact, I think that's why he's late right now, is because he thought he would be done with some of his tests, but he's not quite.
Yeah, Dan went through that as well, where they were like, oh, you're going to get out, you're fine. 2 weeks later, still here, fantastic. This story I read about, I didn't believe it, I kind of tossed it off. And then when we got the promo material on the show, they were like, hey, talk about this documentary. Because when I read it, I was like, holy shit, I remember reading about this. I can't believe this is actually coming out and it's real. He confronted his alleged sexual abuser as a child, and you guys have this on video, and the guy admits to it. Is that true, Paul?
Yeah, it's true. It's a wild thing. First of all, I have to say that I came into the project after they had already done this confrontation, and they had been shooting for a few years, just sort of randomly. It's Chris Castles and whoever else was handy to hold a camera were just sort of shooting around Andy for years. And so that's what I'm dealing with. It's one of the reasons why it's taken so long to put this project together, is that it's all sort of found footage, and nobody, like I told you before we started, I'm thinking of having the credit on the film be directed by nobody in particular, because it's just this sort of random hodgepodge of footage with no, agenda, no systematic approach at all. But the result of that is it feels really real. I mean, it really feels like, nobody's trying to put on a show here. This is all legit. And Andy's life has been crazy. I mean, Andy's a great comic. I got to tell you this. He is a great comic. And if you see his special, which Doug and I also were involved with, which was shot at Doug's house in Arizona, small, little, intimate, really sort of down and dirty kind of. It's kind of got a punk vibe to it. But if you see Andy's work, it's like he's so fucking real and honest, and he's such a character, and his life is so bizarre that it goes to these really strange places. Mm-hmm. And like Andy will talk about rape in a way that nobody else talks about rape. And you hear this whole thing about you can't make jokes about rape or whatever. When you see what Andy has to say about it, it's fucking wild, because then you also find out that his mom is a rape baby, and there's a whole world around this shit. So everything that Andy does is like really visceral, and I think he's hilarious with the shit that's as dark as can be, which is one of the reasons I guess that Doug probably loves him.
Well, I've known Andy for over 20 years. We've been best friends, and he always had this story, and I do jokes about this guy, Pat Spleen, that molested him, but he'd always make it funny. He never came at it from a victim standpoint. It was always fucking hilarious. And then one day he calls me up and he says he found the guy. He found out where he lives. He found out like all this shit about his life. But Andy's he's the funniest person I know, hands down the funniest person. He's a great comedian sometimes.
But I always said if I'm going to get murdered, I would like to be murdered with Andy, because Andy will get me out on a laugh.
Okay.
Make
Fair,
the
yeah.
darkest shit hilarious. It's unbelievable.
Sometimes he'll go on stage and he'll just go with whatever's in his head. So he'll start doing a bit that he forgot to do the setup for. And he's adding all these new punchlines you've never heard. And you know what he's talking about, but he forgot to say the part that makes it make sense for the audience. So he's a brilliant mind, as the movie was titled.
He's kind of like a jazz musician who has had no idea about music at all. Just plays, doesn't know what the hell he's doing.
Coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's trying to get into the room right now. You guys having trouble over there or what?
He's in, he just doesn't have his camera on.
Okay, he's trying to get in, doesn't have his camera on. Once he does, we'll pop him in. In the meantime...
So anyway, he'd been talking about this thing in his life, doing bits about it here and there, not really focused on it, but it was a thing that we all knew about, but it started to really, resonate. He can tell you this as well, except he'll tell it in 10 times the amount of time. But it started, like he said, like shoes in the dryer. It started to really, and he realized that so much of what his life is, all the fuck ups in his life, how, he became a road comic drunk that burned bridges right and left and all of this shit. And he realized that a lot of it was stemmed back from this incident in his life. And whether or not it's just a narrative he's created in his head or it's legitimate, it's an amazing story.
All right, before we get Andy in on this, Andy finds the guy, and he has this fucking harebrained scheme about how he's going to confront his pedophile. He knows he lives in a gated community in Florida. He's got this Chris Castles is his flunky that says he'll come along and film it. Then he says, well, and if I can't get through the gate, I'm going to try to, he lives on a golf course, so we're going to swim across the pond and get in the gated community. I'm like, there's fucking alligators in there. And you're going to have your buddy, your stooge fucking Chris Castles trying to paddle with one arm while he's filming this? This doesn't make any sense. So I flew down to try to fucking corral the project into something like that will work.
But so this tortured Andy for years, and he had talked about going to maybe confront this guy for years. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, and we all just assumed, okay, that's a thing Andy's going to talk about until he dies. But then out of the blue, all of a sudden, he bought plane tickets, and this thing happened. And that's why I wasn't involved, is because it just happened, and who expected it? But Doug ended up going down with him. And there's a whole story about how they ended up meeting him, because he lived in this gated community and they couldn't get in and they didn't really have a plan. And so Doug concocts a hilarious excuse to get the guy to come out and meet them at the hotel across the street from the gated community. And
Andy found out that the guy had a kid in college. And I go, all right, I'm going to call him up and say I'm a private investigator, and I have some news about his daughter up at whatever college she was up at in the Northeast. Because that's one thing, no matter what the guy thinks, if you have information about his child, if he's not fucking it, he's going to want to know immediately. So he did come out to meet us, and we caught it all on tape.
Or maybe even more so if he's fucking it, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to say.
So it's wild because Andy, for years, Andy talked about all the things he wanted to ask the guy. And then when it got down to it, it just became this, it turned into something else. And it was basically Andy saying, just fucking acknowledge this. That's all I want is for you to admit this.
Yeah,
and Doug actually
about what you did to me. And he goes, well, yes. And you're like, oh shit. And the guy brought a cop with him. So even the cop at that point thinks that we're somehow trying to fucking hijack this guy. And when he said, yeah, I'm sorry, the cop is even like, all right, fuck you, dude.
Wow.
And the funny thing is when they showed up with the cop, he showed up with a cop and his wife, which made first of all, it meant the comedy was out. As soon as there's a cop there, the comedy goes south, right?
Yeah.
But so the cop says to him, and you are, because apparently the guy told the cop, this is what the guy called and said, and I'm a little nervous about going to this thing. This seems weird. So the cop comes with him, and the cop looks at Doug and goes, and you're a private investigator, you said? And Doug goes, No. I said I'm investigating privately.
Wordplay.
Yeah, and Andy just popped in, but before we get to you, Andy, I got a question as a director, Paul. How do you make this funny? The three of you guys are absolute comedic legends. How do you make a topic and a subject like this, especially a confrontation?
2 words. Andy Andrist. That's how.
Yeah, that's true. Well, first of all, that's the thing is that, to me, this is sort of like, it's climbing comedy Mount Everest. How do you take a subject like this and, and do something that's funny with it? That's a real challenge as a comedian. And it's, when Bobcat Goldthwait was doing Call Me Lucky, I heard about it and I was like, oh man, I hope this doesn't step on it all. And so he sent me a screener and I was like, once again, every time this subject is broached, it's so morose. And it's almost like this movie is almost a paradigm for a different way of dealing with this shit. Like you can deal with this stuff. It's major. It fucks people up for life. But, it doesn't always have to be poor me. And that's what Andy did. Andy was able to turn it into comedy. So there's a lot of his stand-up that's kind of a spine for it that, and it's odd how it's working because on one hand, the comedy is funny, but then you also know the reality of the situation and it makes the comedy a little bit less funny. And it's weird. It lives in this weird space of it's funny, but I'm not laughing. And it's a really intense process. One of the reasons it's taken so long is because amidst all the funny, and Andy is always funny about it, even when he gets really serious. And he does have some times where he opens up emotionally, but he ultimately turns it into something funny. But even though Andy is always funny, you still want to be respectful of the seriousness of this subject matter. So it's a really interesting game. And because it was not shot systematically at all, and I'm really dealing with mostly what I consider found footage, it's sort of coming together in a kind of mosaic. There's all these moments that you kind of have to get the picture from.
Yeah. To Ross's point, making like a linear version of that's got to be tough, right?
You're walking a real fine line with this subject matter and then this confrontation that, let's face it, everybody dreams about. Like, even to a lesser extent, there's teachers from like middle school that I hate that I'd love to go back to and be like, fuck you, look at how successful I am.
Yeah, you told me I wouldn't have a calculator in my pocket every day. Guess what, bitch? I've got the entire breadth of human knowledge in my pocket constantly. You should have watched Star Trek, bitch.
I think at one point there's some footage of Doug going, man, I'd like to meet some of the women that fucked me in my past. I'd like to meet them and sit them down and go, what were you thinking?
Andy, you just popped in.
I don't have to take this abuse.
No, not at all.
Apparently you do.
Yeah, apparently you do. What made you not want to kill this guy after years and years of doing stand-up, dealing with it, living with it, having this burden as a child? Once you see him again in real life, what makes you not want to fucking murder this guy?
Well, I went in with the intention of, getting him on film because he used to put me on film a lot. So that was kind of like mano a mano, like you did that to me. So here it is. We're doing it to you poetic, right now.
Yeah.
So that was kind of felt like almost, earlier in my life, if I'd have run into him, especially after he sold my dad that Grand Marquis lemon, I would have probably murdered him.
So you're saying that the bad car, that was the bridge.
You getting touched.
Right.
You getting touched was secondary. It was that shitty car that really pushed you over the edge.
It wasn't even a Crown Vic. It was a fucking Mercury Grand Marquis. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You piece of shit.
So, but I got groomed, so I really didn't. Sean Rouse had a line about being molested is like being raped in the future. Because you don't really realize what's going on, I just wanted him to, pay me my money and I could leave because it was like he had I had a deal where I'd go down and help him with his videotaping business. And that was his ruse. He was this handicap guy. Like he'd use his handicap like Ted Bundy used his crutches. Help me lug this over there. So it was all under, like I'm helping this guy and then I'm getting paid.
Andy, just to give them some backstory, Andy's father was in a wheelchair and he knew this guy from the VA hospital.
in another state where like, so he
trusted this guy to fucking put a young teenage Andy to work. And that's how he met this.
And that's one of the weird things that affected Andy is because essentially really just a slight shift to, a hair over. And it's like his dad was pimping him out. And so there was all this weird stuff with his relationship with his parents. And,
basically I was on a work trip to go get school clothes. And all the stuff that went on there, I didn't really talk about at home or anything. So it just becomes kind of a part of your daily walking psyche. And then as you get older, you start piecing it together. And I know Doug, sitting with Doug on the Man Show, we just lived there. But we talking one night, and I gave him the guy's name, and then Doug started sleuthing him. And I hadn't even, as the years went by, I didn't think, oh, yeah, I should look him up, see what he's up to these days.
What do you think the chances are Doug's the guy behind the don't fuck with cats thing too? Like he found that guy also. He's just all this time he's been posing as a comedian in public, but really he's just doing like social justice.
Doing God's work out there. Yeah.
You're a sword.
The weird thing is there's a lot of gaps here, but go with it. After the fact, the guy ends up taking Andy and Doug to court. Because they were upfront about we're filming this.
Well, and we filmed it, and then I announced on the internet that I was going to be putting it out at halftime of the Super Bowl.
So the guy calls a lawyer, and they try and get a cease and desist from them doing anything with the footage, and they also try to sue them for there's defamation and conspiracy for extortion. That's a long story, and all this other stuff. But so they end up going to court with this thing. And that's really the real victory is because the judge heard all this stuff and they were talking about how Andy had been talking about this on a podcast. And that's one of the things in the movie is that you see Andy talking about this shit publicly on stage, into microphones all the time, podcasts, various things talking about this. Because that's kind of one of the ideas is if anybody had talked about this when it first happened, everything would have been different, and people don't talk about it. People are ashamed or whatever, so they talk about it. So there's all this footage of Andy talking about it really, really publicly. And the guy talks about this one podcast that Andy did with Christine Levine, where he tells the story that he's going to go and meet with the guy and he's going to confront him on camera and all this stuff. And so that becomes a thing in the case. And the judge ultimately says, well, I'm going to have to listen to this podcast. So the judge ends up listening to the Christine Levine podcast and hearing Andy making, and it's unbelievable because I've never heard Andy talk about this incident without making it funny. And so the judge is hearing Andy doing the darkest comedy about all this shit too. And finally ends up coming out and saying, fuck this guy. He clearly did it. And Andy is just trying to deal with it. And you guys can do whatever you want with the footage. So that actually became the real victory.
And didn't you get $100? Was that the fine?
No, we got awarded like $1, and then the attorney was we call him our Saul Goodman, Jay out there in Florida. He was in from the beginning, like he just knew it was going to be weird. He wanted to stay a little bit away from the fray.
And this is a weird thing too. Andy met the guy at a party at Doug's house, and he just so happens to practice law in the same Florida town that this guy lived in.
Right. So I got
total coincidence.
Yeah. So I had legal here.
His name's on bus benches. He's a fan. He's a friend of ours. So the fact that he was a lawyer came in handy. But if it was a death row trial, you wouldn't hire him.
Doug, let me ask you this.
What are the odds that this lawyer that's a Doug Stanhope fan that's just hanging out at a party happens to be in the exact same town as Andy's molester now lives with his wife in a gated community?
I would say actually pretty high, knowing Doug Stanhope. If it's going to happen to anybody, it's probably going to be Doug, let's face it. Doug, let me ask you this. When you guys confront this guy, he says yes. You go back to the hotel room. What's the conversation like in that hotel room between you and Andy after all of this happens, after all these years? He finally says yes. What's that like in the hotel room afterwards?
It was a Sunday morning, afternoon. I guess it'd have to be afternoon because we're watching the early games at the hotel bar.
Sam Snead Bar.
Yeah.
To be specific.
Andy's memories are
He's a golf legend, but
Yeah.
it was that's the gated community was right next door.
All the brain
across from
damage that he should have. He fucking remembers. Wait, but we just kept calling this phone number we had for the guy, and we kept getting voicemail. And I'm like, maybe he's at church. I don't know. And we'd all but given up. Andy had gone back to the room, and I said to Castles, just let me try one more time. And he fucking answered the phone, and Castles is like, oh shit, get my camera.
But after the guy says yes, he did it. What do you guys say afterwards? Are you shocked? Because let's face it, you show up with a cop. One, you don't admit to shit like this. Why did the guy even admit to it in front of a cop and on camera? That's what seems so unbelievable about it. Do you guys go back to the room and say, dude, we can't get over this?
He's 76
Well,
years old.
that's sort of
We stayed at
sort
the
of came
bar.
up in the court case. He didn't actually come out and say I did it, but Doug actually said to him, to sort of stop the conversation, and he goes, "Can you at least say that you're sorry?" And the guy goes, "Yes." And Doug reiterates, he goes, "So you're sorry?" And he says, "Yes." And Andy said, "So you can say you're sorry?" And the guy says, "Yes." And apparently, under Florida law, that's an admission of guilt.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I assume everybody from Florida is guilty of something.
Yeah.
Something. They got to be guilty of something.
Yeah,
It's
that's
something.
why
I
the
don't know what's
gates
in the
are
water.
the gates are on the communities to protect the people on the outside.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, that's a good point.
Man.
Free range pedophiles is not a good thing.
Well, no, and now we're seeing it play out in the news media. Although it seems like a lot of people are trying to fucking hide that shit. But this Ghislaine Maxwell trial is exposing some shit that I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with.
Yeah,
And
it's not televised.
Like it's not televised because it's federal court, and that's the standard for that. But I also think that I think that while people have a keen sense of social justice, probably too much these days, this one is one that they just don't want to talk about. You saw it with Bill Burr on the morning shows after his 2017 special. Like, did you think you went too far? He goes, no, I think the rapist went too far, actually.
Yeah.
But I think people are just super uncomfortable having this discussion. And Andy, what you guys are doing, talking about it and adding your sense of fucked up humor is probably going to make this conversation a lot more palatable for people. So something can actually happen. So child rapists don't spend 15 to 18 months in prison and then go on about their lives. Right.
Yeah. That's part of kind of an unstated theme in the whole movie is that, you got to talk about this stuff. And one of the really fucked up things is that, I don't want to, this is not a QAnon, everybody in government is raping children and drinking adrenochrome. This is not this, but the amount of child sex abuse that goes on is unbelievable. In fact, interviewing Andy's family, because he grew up with 5 brothers in a kind of dysfunctional household, and his mother was a social worker and used to invite people to live in the house who needed work through this church group that this guy just got out of prison. He needs a place to live and get on his feet for, 2 months, which turns into 2 years. And these people are living in the house with the 5 boys. One of Andy's brothers was repeatedly ritually gang raped by one of these guys. Who used to throw him in the trunk of his car and take him to what he describes as these sort of satanic rituals. And I said, so all this shit was going on in the same house and nobody ever talked about it.
My God, man. Again, all of this seems unbelievable. Andy, for you personally, how did it change your life afterwards, after you were able to confront this guy?
Excuse me. It took a minute, or, it took a while. But because in the immediate aftermath, we drank, we celebrated, we high-fived. But then it was like, well, actually, it's like when you slay your demon or whatever, and then it's like, well, now what am I going to do? And I still was a cross with my wife, or still had some of the same things, but it just kind of slowed down. Like I described to Paul as like rocks in a dryer. It's like that background racket and noise and these, whenever I'd hear stories, I'd just kind of go into a depression or whatever about it. That kind of just slowly went away. So it did its thing. It was like, that's the only kind of therapy I could afford is to go confront the guy. Mm-hmm. So
and then it was like when the guy instituted this lawsuit, then it was kind of like, as Andy put it at the time, he was like, if I lose this, that's like getting raped all over again.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that came up with the having to go to court. And fortunately, Doug was there because our bar tabs, it was right at Christmas, and we waited for about 5 days before going into this. But I knew if I lost to that guy, that would be it. Like if he came after, sued my family, and, it's like I would have had my moment of like celebrating, and then it would have brought some consequences down that I wasn't willing to deal with.
Yeah.
So, even in the legal papers, the guy was arguing that Andy wasn't acting like a victim. He's making jokes about all this stuff, and he's making jokes about, other people that this happened to and things. And he goes, and that's, obviously they're not even taking this seriously. So something else is going on here. And their lawyer just said, really? Like they want to go down that road. They want to go down the road of comedy as part of this?
Well, and one of the things too that was legally questionable, when I would go there as a young supple boy, teenage, on the cusp of teenage, hotness or whatever, to get me back for those last couple of tugs, he promised to buy me a car of my choice.
If you graduated.
Yeah, when I graduated. So I picked out a 1984. That's the year I graduated. Spider,
Fiat Spider.
Fiat Spider, and I was like a ragtop maybe. So all these years later, that was one thing I remembered to do was grab my high school diploma and present it to him and say, "You owe me a car." Which if I should have probably left all that out, but from a business standpoint, we had a business arrangement, and he didn't pay me the car. So like, please get me the car. I graduated. Here's my diploma. And he looked at it like it was shit. Like a high school diploma from Coquille, Oregon is worthless.
Okay.
Well, that's true.
Calling back to our earlier conversation about Amber Heard, if Andy didn't have a fucking entire history of talking about this guy and his molestation in funny terms, and he just said on tape during the confrontation, "You owe me a car," they could go, "Oh, he's trying to blackmail this guy." But with the history, they could put it in the context of, "Oh, this guy's again obviously kidding."
And that was part of what they did want the car. Was they were trying to get him charged with extortion.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I hate to bring this up, but now I'm thinking if I were to get molested, what kind of car I'd want.
Yeah.
I got to go with
get molested by a priest or a Boy Scout leader or someone with some deep pockets behind him. That's
for real. Yeah.
shot.
I mean, you know what's weird was when that all went down. I used to go to the Catholic Church in Atlanta where one of the first guys got popped, and I wasn't touched, and I was like, is there something about, was I not good looking enough as a child? Like, I look back and I was like a model child. I don't understand why I wasn't pretty enough, and that's fine. But I guess if I had to pick a car, I'd go with that OJ Bronco. I want the white, because it exists
What
out
about,
there.
do you want Al Cowling driving it all the time? Or?
Yeah, I'd pay him, obviously.
Yeah, because AC, he's probably...
Racist.
We have a
Driving
sign.
is crazy.
Yeah, that's true. You may want to get like a white driver.
Yeah, well, you have to these days.
Let AC ride the back with you.
I got to get a trans driver now.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to get the guy from Green Book.
Oh, God.
This can only go badly.
I think
I love this.
maybe that's what that fella thought, because I stopped corresponding with the guy. Like the last visit was very dramatic, and I broke up with him and said no more, and then a couple years later, he got a hold of my dad. Just, I'm sure, trying to find out if anything was going on, and then he ends up selling him that car at that point. So maybe he, in his stupid head, thought that solved our thing. But no, I graduated from high school and I wanted what I wanted. It wasn't your mom's old car.
Yeah, it was
That's what it was.
So you need to update your wish list, I guess.
Yeah.
And I don't want that. And if Steve or Pat or whatever he goes by, I don't want the 84 version of it. They came out with a new one. So let's look at those first.
Yeah, let's amp it up. Is it electric?
Well.
Oh, yeah, I should think about that.
You got to think about your carbon footprint after you get raped.
Yeah. That's exactly what Andy said. Andy said, maybe I should get a car that won't leave a big carbon footprint, at least not as big as the one that was left on me.
Doug, what's your favorite rape car?
Sandusky. Hang on. That's what I was trying to come up with the name. Like over the course of the years, and again, Andy and I have been working together for over 2 decades. But when a story like Sandusky came up, he's doing Sandusky bits long after everyone's forgotten his name because those stories would register with him and he'd fixate on shit like that. Sorry, this is way
the Sandusky thing, when that happened, it really sort of it turned up the volume on all the shit in Andy's head.
Yeah, I was listening to the Dan Patrick show the Monday after the verdict, and it was just a bunch of dudes like me calling up and going, "Hey, I would just like to say I was," and breaking up, and I was ready. I was all loaded up, ready to go with some some heartfelt humor on this thing. But that was like hearing all those guys crack and everything, and it was like, all right, I'm doing this. I think I started getting the pieces together at that point. That's when I, went up and recorded Christine Levine's podcast because I knew if I shoved my diploma in this guy's face, he would probably do what he did, not buy me.
And it was really wild because he brought his.
This happened. Andy doing bits about this guy and how his molester had hand braces. And it wasn't until later I realized I could have just walked away. I didn't even have to run. I don't know if I'm gay or I just like helping people.
And the really, well, there's a lot of fucked up stuff going on. But the fact that the guy brought his wife.
And she was like Filipino. She didn't have a mastery of the Florida language.
I don't know that for a fact, but he was a good 30 years older than her. She was Filipino, and a nurse showed up in her fucking work smock thing. And he left her when the fucking cop said, well, you're free to go. He fucking left her crying in the cop's arms.
And probably this is my favorite thing of how this all happened or everything. It was like it was healing eventually, but that perp walk where he's walking with his cane with a sense of urgency, and he gets in his car, and the camera, Chris is with him right there with the camera. And when he sits in his car, he looked just defeated. Like he looked like I looked every time I tried to, I just look in the mirror and go, oh God, I'm broken or devastating. Something's wrong. I used to punch myself bloody and think it was because I like the Rocky movies. But seeing him in his car with that look of devastation, and then he guns out of there and leaves his wife sobbing with the cop, which I don't care what you've done in life. That's never a good move.
No,
to leave your wife behind and drive. And he took all these videos of me, and I kind of felt like he had them still. So that would explain why he had to zip out of there to go delete his previously loved folder.
Burn some VHS tapes.
Yeah, there was a beta fire behind his condo.
You're burning VCR tapes. It stinks too, by the way.
Yeah, that specifically tells you the years of my molestation is I was filmed in beta.
And here's another wacky thing is that they go to this court case, right? And they obviously they didn't let cameras in, so we don't have any footage of it. We just have these guys talking about it before and after. But Doug talks about how one of the hardest things is that you can't be funny. And Andy has never not been funny talking about what happened to him. So it was like the ultimate comedy challenge.
When you're a kid in church and your parents would like squeeze your thigh when you're starting to crack up and make you and your brother are laughing at some dumb shit and they'd fucking jam their thumb into your thigh. That's what I was doing to Andy to get him shut the fuck up in court.
At least you were being a good friend, because if it were me, I would be making direct eye contact with him, laughing myself. And there's no way, if you're in a public situation in a scenario where you're not supposed to laugh and your buddy is looking right at you, you can't not laugh.
Yeah.
It's some kind of weird psychological thing. Andy, did you ever run into any of the other victims of abuse? Because there had to be more, right?
Yeah, somebody got a hold of me, but he was unstable.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So it's like maybe this guy had a type.
Right on the spot.
Yeah,
He's doing it right on the spot right there. You're watching Gordon Ramsay cook right now, folks.
I was a little jealous at first, but yeah, no, this guy got a hold of me. His story was
the same guy.
Yeah,
You're talking about up in Northern California,
right. Yeah,
molested by the same guy, right?
Yeah. Like somebody that this
other victims of the
Pats
same
or
fella.
whatever the fuck his name is. Yeah.
Because I'm sure it wasn't just you, right?
No, it definitely wasn't just you.
No, I doubt it. But, at some point I was hoping that I would get, hear more but I don't need, I got him to admit it right there, what happened between us. But this other guy got a hold of me and, like I said, he was a bit unstable. And then I, had to, keep him away, keep him away from me. He made a threat towards my daughter.
Oh boy.
So I was like,
But just like your mother, the social worker who'd bring fucking weird people into your house, you brought him to the gig and the hotel afterwards.
Right. Yeah, we did a podcast with him, and then
Apple tree.
Right. We taped him, and he told his story, and then he blew up later and threatened everybody and demanded it be taken down. So yeah, that guy had clumsy hands, and it shows.
Wow. Was he fucked up because of what had happened to him, or he was just born like an unstable person?
Well, that's the thing is like, I was my dad being in a wheelchair took our family down a little, from, so we were kind of poor-ish, not for Coquille standards. We were middle class in Coquille, but we were always struggling. And I think that he kind of preyed on, poor kids or ones, because like, oh, this guy's rich. He used to buy me matching Adidas sweatsuits. I'd go home with $100 in a sweatsuit. And like, man, my rich uncle or whatever, I would frame it as.
He also used to ply him with liquor, and he used to buy him porn.
We partied.
Right.
And I mean, it was in terms of grooming, it was sort of textbook.
That's how it goes, though, right? The people like that, it's like
they build a trust with you.
Yeah.
That you can't break,
and it's like any other.
They're holding secrets.
It's like any other.
They also make you feel special. And when you're from a place where, like Andy grew up with 5 brothers, all kinds of nutty shit going on. Nobody was really minding Andy's store.
Right.
And all of a sudden somebody says, "Hey, you're kind of special."
Well, that's the thing. They prey on people that don't either have the ability to. Or whatever it is to communicate the abuse. So the first big scandal in America was that school for the deaf and blind in Wisconsin. Remember back in the 1950s,
right?
And it's obviously the kids couldn't go back and tell their parents. And then there was the one in Canada where it was all the native kids, and they were like being anti-native. So they weren't there. At some point, Canada wasn't allowing them to go back to their native families because they wanted to integrate them, quote unquote, into Canadian society and shit.
Yeah,
and that's why that's why those people are chosen as victims because they're like already at a disadvantage. Right. Here's something I learned in court, because they were me and Doug had to be quiet. The lawyers talked, and they said that I implied that we drank together, which I thought we were back in the day. He'd make me a drink, he'd have a drink, and they said he's been sober since. So I was like, oh, okay. So I've been drinking alone a lot longer than I thought. At least 14 years.
Drinking brothers.
Yeah.
Drinking brothers, exactly. I want to talk about...
I just wanted to throw one thing in. When you said, do you think this guy was unstable because of his molestation or... That's the problem. If you ever watch Intervention or My 600-Pound Life or something, at about the 6-minute mark, they do a montage of everything that this person went through as a child. And then they find one thing that they blame it on. Oh, their parents divorced, and that was what caused. You have no idea what causes instability. I know people with perfectly fucking perfect childhoods that are fucked up. There's nothing you can blame it on. But
all I can say is that if Andy didn't find comedy, that he might have been a school shooter.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Well, I mean, that wasn't really hip back then.
I don't see that.
No.
I don't see any anger. Andy would have been funny at a day job, regardless.
Well, that's one of the things that I like to say. We talk about philosophy and shit a lot on this on my other show, but it's
philosophy and shit.
Philosophy and shit. Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it when you're drunk and on drugs all the time.
Plato said
that. Maybe Seneca, I don't remember. But if you could turn your pain into empathy for other people, you can save 2 lives. yours and theirs. And I think that's Andy. You might be one of the better. Did we drop him? Is he out now?
Yeah, he might be out now.
He may have had to. But I think that's something that he's definitely doing. And what we mentioned earlier, it's a very hard conversation for people to have, and being able to joking about it is almost like a stoic way of dealing with it, because you're saying this shit doesn't control me. We're gonna fucking make a joke out of it, but we are going to discuss exactly what happened. I think that's a really important thing that you guys are doing.
But I have to, in Andy's defense and in promoting what Andy is, a lot of people say, oh, well, he turned his pain into comedy. No, Andy was funny anyway. And that was just something that was important to him. We're of the same ilk, where we find the darkest things the funniest. When my mother fucking killed herself, I wasn't thinking, oh, I can use comedy to make this a better situation. As she was killing herself, I'm going to get 7 good minutes out of this. So I think Andy knows what's important as much as he's used comedy to deal with it. That degrades comedy when you say, oh, I use comedy like it's fucking Lipitor. No, he's funny anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Fair enough. That's not to take away from his talent. I was just saying that, if he didn't find that outlet, who knows where all that nuttiness.
Well, I think that's a natural human instinct, though. I was in the infantry in the Army, and we see and do a lot of fucked up shit. And the way we handle that, because it sucks, is just to talk shit to each other and make fun of everything all the time. Call each other gay all the time. That's pretty much the standard for adolescent males through, I don't know, like your 80s probably.
Yeah.
Once you turn like 85, you start calling each other gay, I think. But up until that point, fair game.
Yeah, and even because I'm a comedian, even when I got out of the hospital, 2 days ago, went back on air. I've lost a ton of weight.
Yeah, we've been making age joke for days now.
Yeah, all I said was, look, I'm starring in the prequel of Philadelphia. We never saw a young Tom Hanks
sucking dicks,
fucked all the time. Like we never saw him get the AIDS. So that's why my appearance is the way it is.
And if he had it, he was probably a bottom, too. That's an important fucking part of the plot of the story.
Yes, and it's just me getting fucked over and over and over again. And, I want to do it method. I want it to be real. And that's how dark we are. Yeah. And that's why we get along.
I'd watch that.
Yeah.
I'd definitely watch that.
Yeah. I like weird prequels to fucking movies and shit.
But since we're talking about Andy's comedy in general, I just want to really throw out there about his special, which we did
The Last Shot.
In the middle of all this. Last Shot. Yeah. And Andy specifically doesn't talk about the abuse at all in that special, because he talks about it so much in the movie, and he doesn't want to be the child abuse guy, it's not
Poster
really a book, So his special is, he talks about the fact that there was a school shooting at his community college, or a community college in his neighborhood or something. He talks about a lot of really, really dark shit, and makes it really funny. And if you like the kind of comedy that you guys like, if your listeners like it, they should check out Andy Andrist's Last Shot.
Yeah, and
NatureJack.com or Vimeo.
I was just going to say, it's available at NatureJack.com. This was produced and hosted by Doug, and then directed by you, Paul, correct?
And you did this at your house in
Brisbee?
In Brisbee?
Brisbee, yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Right here in this very room.
Sweet.
And it's beautiful, because it's like I say, it's a small little room, and it's like, I like comedy specials that are about getting down and dirty with comedy. I hate when these comics, who maybe you've heard of, whatever, they're average comics. They're not stars. And they do specials in these huge theaters with 1,200 people. I'm like, what the fuck is the point of that? I much prefer seeing comedy in a small, intimate, smoke-filled little room. And that's what we did at the Funhouse. There were only about 60 people in the audience.
Oh, 35.
Yeah, maybe. That's true, yeah.
If you guys have ever seen Norton on stage, or just fucking Norton by himself.
Yeah.
When Norton was on O&A, it was Norton. As I go do fucking Cumia next. But Norton,
we got to go, actually.
Led the show. He was so quick. And when he did a special in front of 1,500 people, the audience ruined his fucking show, because you know how quick he is. And these fucking applause breaks, you're ruining the rhythm of this guy fucking talking, because they're hyped up. My first Comedy Central Presents, they came out and they have the warm-up guy going, 1,200 people. Now, when the next comic comes out, what are you going to do? Woo! Standing they're fluffing the audience. And I went out and I go, sounds like all my fans are here. And the fucking The audience goes, woo! And I said, what's my name? Dead silent. First thing on the editing room floor that they cut out. No, we don't have that. We have to make.
Well, I will say this. I know you guys got to get out of here. The three of you guys are legends. I feel like in today's stand-up culture, Netflix is flooded with a bunch of people who aren't really stand-ups at all. And you're watching these specials, like you said, where it's, 500-600 people there. And it's, they might be fringe from a podcast or something else. You guys are the real OGs. We appreciate your work. And it has been an absolute honor to have you guys on today. Please check out the special Last Shot. It is available on Vimeo and naturejack.com. And I cannot wait for this documentary to come out. Please come back. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, check out the Doug
Yeah,
Stanhope
man.
podcast.
When we're ready to put this thing out into the world, we'll get in touch for sure. Because it ain't for everybody.
No, but it is for us.
Sounds like it.
It's definitely for us. Yeah, and check out the Doug Stanhope podcast too. It's hilarious.
And you know what? Don't even worry about fucking what's real comedy anymore. Everyone has an avenue, and it's about time comedy has genres the same way music does.
Yeah.
It's not just stand-up comedy. There's this type. There's fucking look at all the types of music. It's not really death metal as much as thrash metal, as much as we should have fucking genres in comedy.
I 100% agree. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. Please come back when the documentary comes out. In the meantime, again, check out Last Shot, Andy's special on naturejack.com or vimeo.com. For D'Anthony Holloway, I'm Ross Patterson. This is the Drinkin' Bros podcast. Good night, everyone.